Gonna be a little late. So good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm Christ I am disciple, aka Anson Phillip, and we're gonna go through what you see on the topic there. Restore the Snyderverse. All right, got some talking to do. It is very late in the night. It's 11:16, 11:17 in the night. All right, so currently we're looking at Restore the Snyderverse, WBD, release the Snyder Cut globally in cinemas and in IMAX. That's what the topic is. We'll get along to that topic soon. But let me do the following things before we get to stepping on this stuff. I see somebody's already here, but we're gonna have to notify the rest of the people about this stream. So notifying the people on Twitter first, sending out my notifications now. All right, there you go. That's one. So I'm just kind of waiting for people to come into the stream before I begin. Okay, I'm just notifying different people right now. Take a little while. Just wait for everybody to come in as well. I'm gonna start rocking and rolling. Just notifying everybody. Now there's a way to simultaneously do this, but now this is the way I'm doing it. Okay, so we're 5 minutes in already. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Let me explain to you guys what's going to happen. So basically, I'm going to read a piece of scripture real quick. That scripture is kind of like a motif to what we're about to talk about. And we'll talk about your top 10 DC films of all time. We'll talk about what the former president of Warner Brothers said concerning Zack Snyder. We'll talk about why now is the appropriate time for WBD to listen to us. And also, we're going to also talk about why we need to address our concerns or requests, etc., not to DC or to WBD, but to particularly Warner Brother Pictures. All right, so we get into all of that tonight. Just contacted everybody. If you want to join as a guest on here, the link is in the chat section, so you can check it out. I am Christ, I am disciple. So we're going to start off with a piece of scripture. I do hope that you guys enjoy the session tonight. I decided to take time. I said I was going to do a session tonight. They know sometimes I said I'm going to do a session. I don't do it. But this time I wanted to keep my word. I wanted it before August 1st goes away that I actually got it done. First of all, happy emancipation to all those people who celebrate emancipation. Emancipation basically is a time when the slaves were freed, and that happened. We commemorated on August 1st. And a lot of Caribbean islands, I live in the Caribbean, a lot of Caribbean islands also celebrate that date. So I believe that today was a holiday, and I do believe Leroy Kong also, he celebrated the holiday as well. All right, now. Let's get to it. So I'm going to read the piece of scripture I'm going to read today is going to be taken from the book of Mark, and it is Mark chapter 9. It's verse 9, verses 35. Okay, it goes like this. After they arrived at Capernaum, Jesus and his disciples sat in a house where they would be staying. Jesus asked them, "What are you discussing out on the road?" But they didn't answer because they had been arguing about which of them was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12 disciples over to him, and he said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be last and must be servant of all." I actually saw this. My uncle, shared some pictures of him and his wife in Curacao, and he was pointing to a hospital, and in that hospital, you were seeing two statues: a statue of a man sitting down there, and a statue of Jesus serving the man, washing the man's feet. And this scripture was prominent there, and I thought I would read this because I want to emphasize it again, because this is basically the motif for what we're going to be talking about tonight. So once again, just to let you guys know, if you want to join as a guest in here, it's cool. Roll up in here. You can do that, or you can just talk with me in the chat. I know it's very late in the night, so whoever comes through, that would be great. I'm not really expecting a lot of people, but I know some people will watch the screen and appreciate it tomorrow. All right, so the scripture, I'm going to emphasize on it again. He said, anyone who wants to be first must take the last place and be servant of everyone else. And this is something that he wasn't telling them, and he wasn't doing it himself. No, he was doing it himself. That's why you could tell them about that. All right, so this principle is a principle of life. A lot of times when you've been put in certain positions, you're put in those positions because those positions require a lot of responsibility, So what you find is that in life, I don't envy people who are put in leadership positions because I understand the responsibility that goes behind it, because If you're put in a leadership position, it means you have this tremendous responsibility to serve a significant number of people. Now, when you're not in a leadership position, you don't have to worry about serving all these different people. All you have to worry about is yourself and maybe those immediately around you. Once you're put in leadership, the thing that makes you the leader is the fact that you have a responsibility to a lot of people. You have to answer to them. You have to take care of them. And therefore, someone who's a leader has to be the most hardworking servant. To lead, you must serve. And you have to serve the least of the people in the group, because the group can only go as fast or as far as the weakest link in it. So it is an immense responsibility. I remember when I was teaching, I learned to listen. A lot of teachers don't listen. You have to learn to listen. You have to have good ears. You have to listen to what these children are telling you. You're not going to obey the children necessarily, because your responsibility is to teach them, right? For them to learn life lessons, not just schoolwork, but life lessons. And to be able to do that, you have to listen. Not only do you have to listen, to be able to serve people, not only you have to be able to listen to them, to see what their needs are and to see what they want and what their goals are, where they want to aspire, where they want to go to, but also you have to listen to them because it informs you of how to conduct yourself leading them. It calls for immense amounts of humility to be effective. And you actually fail when you cannot appropriately communicate to these people to help them in their journeys as we all journey together. So a very effective leader is someone who is able, they have to do their homework, they have to be good listeners, they have to have a good idea of where each individual in their group wants to go and where the group as a whole needs to go. And you cannot get these things, you cannot, and it's a lot of work. As a leader, there's a lot of work that's put on your shoulders. It's a lot of responsibility. It calls for you to work harder than every single individual member of the group, and even teams of members sometimes in the group, because you have to be the hardest worker. You have to be the humblest person to coordinate all these different groups. And you also have to be a good listener. You have to be a good listener. Like I said, all these things are significant. So what we're going to do today, I'm not trying to be a leader, but we're going to go off of this scripture, and I'm going to listen to you, and you're going to start supplying me with information. And that information, I'm going to send to Warner Brothers Pictures so they can collect data on this information I'm about to send them. So this is why it's so important that you participate today, or whenever, in the comment section, whatever, later on. Let's talk about what are I don't care to tell you my preference right now, but what are your top 10 DC films? Now, what I'm going to do, I have a phone here, so I'm going to list some of the DC films that have come out in the last, since 1978 to now. I'm going to list all of them. And you can pick and choose, and you can even start calling off the top of your head the top 10 best DC films you have. You can leave it in the comment section right now, in the chat. You can jump on here as a guest and list your top 10 DC films. But here's the other thing I want you to do for me. I don't just want you to list top 10 DC films. I want you to tell me why, in one word for each film, why it is that you like that film so much that you put it in the top 10. All right. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to have a little fun time. What I'm going to do now, what the hell's going on? Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, just checking to see. Okay, good. All right. Okay. Right. We're good. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with you the top 10 DC films that DC has. Okay. Oh, not top 10. Sorry. Said, you can do your top 10. I don't care what you do. Tell me your top 10 DC films. Go ahead. Shoot it. Shoot it at me. Put it in the chat. Okay. I'm going to list all the DC films, or as many as I can. Typing up on my phone right now. DC films list. Okay. In order. Right here. It said DCU. It said DC. No, but these. Okay, we have DCEU films, but I want DC films. I want DC films. So what I'm gonna do, no problem. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. Oh wow! All right. Ooh, okay. Now what we're gonna do when we talk about top 10 DC films, we're gonna be talking about live action DC films. We're not gonna be talking about animated DC films. We're gonna just keep it in live action. Right. Okay. Okay. When it comes to live action films, right? DC live action films. In 1951, we had Superman and the Mole Men. It was actually a film. It looked something like this. That was in 1951. George Reeves was the Superman in that. And it was Superman and the Mole Men. And that's for the real old timers. If you guys have never seen this film, one of the things I want to challenge you guys to do is to try and collect, or watch all the DC films. Okay, so Superman and the Mole Men. Let me see if there it is right there. Here you go. It's 1951. That was the very first. Well, DC wasn't a. It was a DC film. It wasn't by Warner Brothers. This movie, Superman and the Mole Men. Here's another picture of it. And let's get some more stuff here. And that's about it there. So awesome, though. 1951 picture. George Reeves was the Superman. And Phyllis Coates was Lois Lane. Right? You guys should check it out. It was in black and white. I don't know if they did a colored version for it. And hold on a second. It was an American independent black and white superhero film produced by Lippert Pictures. Okay, Lippert Pictures. Uh, Produced by Barney A. Sarecki and directed by Lee Sholem. It stars George Reeves as Superman and Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. It is the first feature film based on any DC Comics character. All right. It ran in theaters. It was 58 minutes long. It wasn't even an hour. It was released November 23rd, 1951. The music was done by Darrell Cocker and Walter Green. It was written by Richard Fielding and directed by Lee Sholem. So if you guys want to know the very first DC film that ever was produced, and don't forget, you guys can put your top 10 DC films. The very first DC film, live action that is, that was ever done was a Superman film released November 23rd of 1951 by Lippert Pictures, Superman and the Mole Men. All right, you guys can check that out and do some research on that. In 1966, 20th Century Fox and Green Lawn Productions produced Batman 1966. It was based on the 1960 Batman television series, Batman, starring Adam West. It was known as Batman the Movie. It was starring Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin, respectively. So this is the first Batman film on screen. Looks something like this. Why I keep on drifting that way? Okay. It was written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., who also wrote the television series. Directed by Leslie H. Martinson. Produced by William Dozier. Howard Schwartz did the cinematography. All right. It was produced and it was released by 20th Century Fox on July 30th, 1966. Its running time was 104 minutes or an hour, almost 2 hours. Its budget was 1.38 million. It made 3.9 million in rentals. Okay. The film needed to make 3.2 million in rentals to break even. It made 3.9 million, equivalent to 35.2 million in 2022. Right. The consensus was that Batman the movie elevates camp to an art form and has a blast doing it every glorious tongue-in-cheek inch of the way. Now, the first Superman movie, which is very interesting to note, though it was an action-adventure movie, it was a serious movie. It wasn't campy. It wasn't funny. So George Reeves played a straight Superman. It wasn't. There was no jokes in it. This movie in 1966 was a campy movie. It was based on the television series Batman, and it was wacky, funky, 60s kind of funky kind of music, and pow, bam. It was funny. It was spoofy. And the movie was the same thing. It was very wacky. Okay. This is indicative of the 60s. The 60s was kind of funk, you know, and so they kind of made fun of Batman. It was like a spoof of Batman, but it did very well. It made its money. They did not do a sequel for it, amazingly. I don't know why. We can investigate that some other time. But Batman 1966 was the second DC film in the Pantheon. The first DC film was Superman and the Mole Men, and that was a serious take on Superman. Very stoic take on Superman. The next DC movie, the third DC movie. So the first two, one was an independent film, and the second one was by 20th Century Fox. The third Superman movie enters into the fray. This was done by Columbia, also known as Sony, EMI, and Warner Distributors in the United Kingdom, and in the United States, Warner Brothers. Okay? The music was done by John Williams. The direction was done by Richard Donner. The screenplay was by Mario Puzo, David Newman, Leslie Newman, and Robert Benson. This is the Superman movie that had a tremendous impact on just visually and so on otherwise. Had a tremendous impact on the industry. And this is it. There are different posters for it. And this is the third DC movie. Okay. This is a scene from the movie. This is where Superman is soaring up into the air of the city. All right. So this is the third DC movie. Again, don't forget, guys, to put your choice for the top 10 DC films of all time. Give me your top 10 DC films of all time. So in 1978, we had our third DC movie. And at the time, there were three different production companies, or five different production companies that were responsible for those three movies. Four. No, five. I'm right. Okay. So we're running down memory lane. We had Superman and the Mole Man, that was played straight. Batman, which was wacky as hell. Superman 1978, that one was actually, it had some comedy in it. It had some seriousness in it. The beginning was very serious. And certain parts of it had a lot of heart. And it was the movie that grossed a tremendous amount of money. In fact, let me just show you guys how much it grossed here. On a $55 million budget, which was a lot of money back in the day, it grossed $300.5 million. So it grossed almost 6 times the amount of money that it took to make it. Okay, which is extraordinary. It was extremely successful. It was Warner Brothers' first venture at this, and it did exceptionally well. Again, give me your top 10 DC films as I go through all the live action DC films, and some other time I'll go through all the animated, but right now we're going to, this is the third DC film in the DC film pantheon. Okay. Now from this is where you will see Warner Brothers as a studio continuously try to capture that moment in time, not understanding the uniqueness of the moment, not understanding the uniqueness of the combination between Donner and Christopher Reeve, and also not ever appreciating that Richard Donner wanted to go in a different direction. He wanted to do certain things. He was just introducing the character of Superman, but he wanted to delve deeper into Superman. Unfortunately for Richard Donner, in the second movie, which we will talk about, which is the fourth DC film, which was a Superman film, which was Superman 2, that came out in 1980, Richard Donner, for creative reasons, had to depart that film, even though it was part of the first film, because he had filmed basically both parts. This was supposed to be the sequel. He had to depart from the studio for creative differences, and as a result, Richard Lester was brought on board to finish off the film and to redo certain parts of the film, because Warner Brothers wanted to capture what the first Superman film was doing. They didn't want an evolution of Superman. They didn't want a growth of Superman. Superman 2 which came out in 1980. In fact, it came out uh, on December the 4th of 1980 in Australia. In the United Kingdom, it came out April 9th in 1981 and June 19th of 1981 in the United States. Its running time was 2 hours and 7 minutes, and it grossed less than the first Superman film. Its budget was $54 million. It grossed $190.4 million. So it grossed less, significantly less than the first film, or $100 million plus less. And the reason was because it didn't really fulfill the original vision that Richard Donner had for the film. You know, Richard Donner filmed most of the film already. They didn't want to go in the direction Richard Donner was going. And to this day, we do not have a full cut of what Superman 2 was supposed to be. Richard Donner's passed away now. There's a edit that is called the Donner cut, but it is not really the Donner cut. We never truly got what we were supposed to get, and Warner Bros. Truly did not make the money they were supposed to make in the sequel. The sequel was supposed to be, it was supposed to blow off the roofs, you know, $600 million probably, but that never happened because the studio decided to force the director, the creative, who had the whole vision of the whole thing, had already filmed the whole part 1 and part 2 together. They decided to go a different direction from him. And it's sad because they dropped the ball back in 1980. Okay, and that's the 4th DC film. All right, with Superman 2. The 5th DC film was Swamp Thing. This film was produced and distributed by United International Pictures, or United Artists, UA. United Artists, I don't think they're around anymore, but and Embassy Pictures. Okay, it was produced in Technicolor. Robbie Greenberg was the cinematographer. Directed by Wes Craven. You all know who Wes Craven is, famous name. It was based on Swamp Thing by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. And Wes Craven wrote and directed the film, and it was released in February of 1982. So this is not a Warner Bros. Production. It was 91 minutes long in the theatrical version, but there was an uncut international version which ran for 93 minutes. Its budget was $2.5 million. They don't say how much it made. Okay. We don't have a recorder, but it's very late. It's almost 12 o'clock, but I'm going to try and move along. So that was the 5th DC film. Coming after that film the next year was Superman 3, sorry. Superman 3 was again produced by Sony and Warner Bros., now formerly known as Columbia, now known as Sony. Warner Brothers did it, and it was 125 minutes. Had a budget of $39 million, and it grossed $18.2 million. It flopped at the box office. This was the first flop, and this was Superman 3. Basically, all the key people were there, but Richard Lester was the one that directed this. The same guy that took over from Richard Donner. And that story flopped. So the 6th DC film was a flop. The 7th DC film introduced Supergirl. And this movie was not done by Warner Brothers. It was done by TriStar Pictures. And it was distributed by TriStar Pictures. The production company was Pueblo Film AG Productions. And Supergirl was based on a screenplay was done by David Odell, directed by Jeanette Schwab. Supergirl. Let me show you Supergirl here. I didn't show you Swamp Thing. So anyway, this is the 7th DC film, and Supergirl. It cost $35 million to make, and it made $14.3 million. It was a box office flop. Supergirl. And then in 1987, 3 years later, because they had a flop with Superman 3, and then Supergirl was a flop, they then put out Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. That was the 8th DC film, live action. Let me get you guys to see this. Here you go. Right? And Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, let's just suffice it to say, 17 million is what it cost. It made 36.7 million, was a box office flop as well. And how do I know when a box office flop is? Well, a box office, a movie to make its box office must make at least 2.5 to 3 times its production budget. All right, because you have advertising and a whole bunch of other expenses that you have to accommodate when you're making movies. So this being the 8th DC film, it was also a flop. So the 7th and 8th DC films were flops. Again, we're talking about top 10 DC films. So if you want to join me, I see people coming in, they're watching, and then they're leaving. You can list your top 10 DC films. Please do not forget to do that. So Superman: The Quest for Peace flopped in 1987, 3 years after Supergirl. They tried again to do another Swamp Thing movie. By the way, Superman: The Quest for Peace is a Warner Brothers production. Supergirl is not. Swamp Thing was not either. So I'm just saying, Batman was not. The Batman movie that came out was not a Warner Brothers production, nor was the very first DC film. That was an independent production. All right. So in 1989, they had the return of Swamp Thing. Here it is right here. I'll show you guys. Oh, please, no, don't do that. Okay. That is right there. Right? And this was again done by Lightyear Entertainment, Bat Film Productions. It's distributed by Millimeter Films. The runtime was 88 minutes. And the budget was $3 million, and it was a box office flop. It made $274,928. The Return of Swamp Thing. That same year in 1989, The Return of Swamp Thing came out. Oh, let's see when it came out. Return of Swamp Thing came out May 12th of 1989. But that same year, the Batman movie came out. That came out, I believe, near to Christmas, if I'm not mistaken. No, came out June 19th of 1989, the summer of 1989. It was extraordinarily successful. Of course, this is the 10th DC movie. This was directed by Tim Burton, a screenplay by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron, the story by Sam Hamm. Danny Elfman was the musician. The production company's Warner Brothers, and distributed by Warner Brothers. Okay, the budget was $48 million. It made $411.6 million, 9 times what its budget was. Was extraordinarily successful. And when I saw that movie, it changed the way how I looked at comic book movies. I knew the comics had changed since The Dark Knight Returns. The graphic comics had changed a bit. Even the Adventures of Batman had changed a bit leading up to 1986. So when this movie came out in 1989, it was dark, it was gothic, it was adventuresome, it was mysterious. I thought that, this was a great movie. And still to this day, when I go back and watch it, the quality is quite good. There's some goofy parts of it, but for the most part, it's a solid movie. You know, it's one of the my top 10 DC films. It's one of my top 10 DC films. Um, and I don't know for you guys, you know, but I want you to list your top 10 DC films. Please do that. All right, now, so this is what it looked like. Okay, this is a scene from the movie. This is coming to the end of the movie. If you guys haven't seen Batman 1989, I think you should have a good look at it. Some really A-listers up in there. You know, Kim Basinger, um, 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 uh, Jack Nicholson as the Joker, Billy D. Williams as Commissioner Gordon. You know, they replaced Billy D. Williams in the next movie. No, he wasn't the commissioner. He was the I believe he was the head of whatever. But tremendous movie. Had a deep impact on my life. Of course, the animated films came off of this movie. That's how revolutionary the movie was. Very violent movie at the time. People said this is not a good movie for kids, but back then the MPA rating was a lot more lenient because this movie is rated, if I'm not mistaken, this movie is rated what? I think it was rated PG. It wasn't even rated PG-13. It was rated PG at the time. But I was quite blown away by the movie. I actually saw the movie not in the cinema, but on cable when I was a teen. I was in, where would I be? I guess the equivalent of grade 9 or 10. I was in grade 9 or 10, something like that. Tremendous, tremendous, tremendous performance by Jack Nicholson, by the way. Okay, it was 1989. Now so that was the 10th DC film. The 11th DC film was again by Warner Brothers, and it was Batman Returns in 1992. I've forever been affected by this film because the A-list, well, you know, Danny DeVito was, you know, a very popular actor at the time, very, very crafty, skilled. He played the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot. And Michelle Pfeiffer, who was new on the scene, she played Catwoman, Selena Kyle, and Michael Keaton, of course, came back as Batman. Now, when you look at them, they look a little goofy here in this poster, right? But I gotta say, man, this is someone cosplaying. This is it. Danny DeVito is a short little guy, you know, but boy, the guy could really play a role. He really can. This is Michelle Pfeiffer. So she was playing a role far outside of how she actually conducts herself as a person. Here's Danny DeVito getting his makeup done. I actually like Batman Returns more than I like Batman 1989. Even though Batman 1989 was something. It was quite something at the time. So it's a game changer because this movie it gave a very serious take on because a lot of movies at the time. Oh yeah, Christopher Walken's in this as well. The legendary Christopher Walken was in this movie as well. Oh, but he was mean. He was a bad man. Here's the great Tim Burton. You gotta love Tim Burton. Tim Burton at the time was doing on HBO Tales from the Crypt, kind of puppet kind of thing, spooky as hell, but funny at the same time. Tim Burton's just a brilliant director. He's got this dark tone to his stuff. You know, somebody could be smiling with you and then kill you in the next second. You know, that was the kind of thing with Tim Burton, how he did his movies. You know, edgy. This is Michelle Pfeiffer, the great Michelle Pfeiffer. And this is the great Danny DeVito. This is him much older. This is not him at the time. And this is, of course, the great Michael Keaton, who, as we all know, played Batman again in The Flash recently. And I am not impressed at all that they did this to this guy. I don't think it was just not right what they did him. They didn't do him justice in that movie. And Michael Keaton can really act. And I don't know why I didn't just get a different suit for him or something. And oh man. Hey, I know Michael Keaton did it for the paycheck, so it is what it is. And they tried to have humor in it when in the original Batman 1989 and also Batman Returns, the humor was to a minimum. You know, the humor was dark to start with, and the humor was to a minimum. You know, they played on words and that kind of stuff. Here's what it is. Michael Keaton, you should never have taken that job. You should have, you know, if Tim Burton was coming on board, oh yeah, sure. Tim Burton's not coming on board. Why would you do that to yourself? I never understood it. Anyway, that's the 11th DC film. Okay. The 12th DC film saw the removal of Tim Burton from the studio, removed Tim Burton from the studio, from Batman. And therefore, Michael Keaton left. Like I said before, Michael Keaton wasn't doing anything without Tim Burton. I don't know why you just didn't stick to your guns, buddy. I don't care how much money they offer you. You want to keep your resume tight. This is Batman Forever. Now, some people like this movie. I personally don't really like it, to be honest with you. And I believe I don't like it because Joel Schumacher was actually wanting to go in a different direction. And again, the studio forced him to do more wackier take and cut out a lot of the more emotional, psychological parts of the movie that Schumacher actually wanted to dwell into. This looks like some sort of wacky, just a very wacky design. I always feel like Warner Bros. Wanted to get and capture the Batman 1966 Batman. I think that's where they wanted to go because they wanted more kids involved. And they don't understand something. Batman 1966 works because it's a product of 1966. Even when we watch it to this day, it's very entertaining because it's a symbol of a time period. When you try to operate outside of the contemporary time period that you're in, that's where you get a problem. So for Warner Brothers, they need to understand that you have to have relevance. And if you do something outside the period that you're in, then the relevance of it disappears. And it's just empty entertainment. And this is what they don't understand. They keep on trying to go for formulas, not understanding you have to deal with the times you're in. You have to be abreast with the times. Don't listen to the stupid fans that say, oh, we want to have John Williams theme and blah, blah, blah. They don't mean it, because when you do bring the John Williams theme, they still don't come. When you do try to do the Batman 1966 or the Superman 1978, they don't come. Because guess what? It's not interesting to them. Because for people to come to something, it has to have some relevance to them. It has to have some meaning to them. It must fit into the context of the times. So anyway, this movie, which was Batman Forever, its budget was $100 million. They were looking for big money. They got 366. They got 336.6 million, and that was a drop from Batman 1989. Batman 1989, they put out 48 million. They got 411.6 million. Way more profit. Let me see. Batman Returns. I don't know what it made. They put out 50 to 80 million. They got 266.8 million. So I'm not quite sure if that's more profit or less profit than Batman Forever. But what I can tell you is this movie came out in 1992. Batman Forever came out 3 years later in 1995. So they thought maybe that I was making money for them, so they decided to do Batman and Robin. And Val Kilmer said, "I ain't going to do no movie that's wacky like that." So he did. So the person that replaced him was George Clooney, and we have some cosplay of Mr. Freeze here. Arnold Schwarzenegger did Mr. Freeze. There he is there. Statue of him. He has some concept art there. So this movie is by and large considered by many to be one of the worst Batman movies ever. The budget for it was between 125 and 160 million. This is the 13th DC film, by the way. And its box office was 238 million. So if you take the average of 125 to 160 million, you add them together. Let's see, if you add them together, you get 285 million. You divide that by 2, you get what do you get? What do you get? 285 million divided by 2. 2 into 28 goes 14. 2 into 5 goes 2. So you're looking at 142 million. You multiply that by 2.5. Let me see what we get. Hold on a second. Okay, it needed to make 355 million. Instead, it made 238 million, so it flopped and lost their money. All right. And this was the 13th DC film. That same year in 1997, they also did Steel, and that also flopped. 16 million it cost, and it only made 1.7 million. So they lost money in 1997 big time. So they didn't make another movie for another 7 years. This was Warner Brothers Village Roadshow Pictures. They did Catwoman, and again that went south. That didn't do well either. So it cost 100 million, and they only made 82.1 million. So that flopped, and that was 7 years later. That was the 14th DC film. The 15th DC film came the year after. It was Constantine, and interestingly enough, Constantine was distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It was Warner Brothers Pictures, Village Roadshow Pictures, the Donner's Company. So Richard Donner was involved in that. Weed Road Pictures, 3 Arts Entertainment. Okay, all those people were involved in it. It was released in Paris February the 7th, but February 18th in the United States. It was 121 minutes. It cost 70 to 100 million to make, and it made 230.9 million dollars. This is the 15th DC film, and let me tell you how much that really is. Okay, so it needed 212.5 million to break even, and it made 230.9. So it actually made its money and a little bit of profit. A little bit of profit from it. So it wasn't marvelously successful. It wasn't a smash out the window hit, but it did make some money for the studio after coming off of so many flops. That studio, Warner Brothers had done 3 flops in a row. 3 flops in a row from 1997 to 2004. So the following year actually was a very good year for them, because that same year, besides Constantine, they also had Batman Begins, which is the 15th DC film. Or is it? Let me see. Hold on. No. Batman and Robin was the 13th. Steel is the 14th. Catwoman is the 15th. Constantine is the 16th. The 17th DC film was Batman Begins. Y'all know Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan. That film cost 150 million to make. Ugh. I think it breaks even. I hope it does. Mm. Ooh. Okay. It breaks even. That's all it does. So it has a $150 million budget and it makes $373.7 million. It just breaks even. It's the first Batman film. So that year, they didn't make a lot of money off of films, but they actually broke even on the films after 7 years of flopping. All right. The 2005, they made some money. Remember, we're talking about the top DC films of all time. So you guys tell me, what are your top 10 DC films of all time? And Batman Begins is the 17th DC film. All right. Warner Brothers coupled up with DC Comics, Legendary Pictures, and Syncope Inc. The following year, they did Superman Returns. Bryan Singer was the one that directed that movie. And Superman Returns, this is the 18th DC film. And the companies that actually were producing it are Legendary Pictures and DC Entertainment. Bryan Singer partially wrote the story along with Jeff Johns, Michael Dougherty, and Dan Harris. They worked with Bad Hat Harry Productions, Peters Entertainment, DC Entertainment, Legendary Pictures. Okay. Woo! Okay. The budget for this movie was a whooping $233 million. Or $204 million if you're looking at the net budget. The box office was $391.1 million. It suffered a loss. So it was a critical and financial failure. So that year they had a flop. And that is the 18th DC film. The 19th DC film came 2 years later, The Dark Knight, and it was wildly successful. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, as you guys know. I don't need to show you the picture or anything. The first DC comic book, the first comic book movie period to break $1 billion. Right? It was wildly successful, like 7 times its budget. All right, 185 million was the budget, and it made a box office of $1.006 billion. Good for them. It's also seen in IMAX. The following year, Watchmen, which is Zack Snyder directed Watchmen, was a 209 superhero film. And Watchmen was directed by Zack Snyder, screenplay by David Hayter and Alex Tay. Cinematography was by Larry Fung. It was distributed by Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures. The production companies was Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, Legendary Pictures, DC Entertainment, Cruel and Unusual Films, which at the time was Zack Snyder's production company, now named I forgot what it's called, but the Stone something. Anyways, Paramount Pictures distributed it internationally, and Warner Brothers distributed it in North America. Running time was 163 minutes. Of course, the runtime was cut down. The budget was 130 to 150 million. Its box office was 185.4 million. It was a box office flop. And this, of course, is the 19th DC film. right? 20th DC film. The following year, they did Jonah Hex. For those of you who don't know what Jonah Hex is, this is it. And it was directed by Jimmy Hayward, screenplay by Neveldine and Taylor. It's distributed by Warner Brothers. The budget was 47 million, so it was a low budget film compared to other comic book movies. It only made 11 million. Another box office flop. 21. That's the 21st DC film. This was in 2010, the following year. And in 2011, the following year, the Green Lantern movie was put out. It's produced by Jeff Johns, Greg Berlanti, Donna Line. Greg Berlanti wrote some of the screenplay. Michael Green, Mike Guggenheim, and Michael Goldenberg. I'm sure Jeff Johns also has to say in that. Anytime you see Berlanti, you know Jeff Johns is not far behind. Directed by Martin Campbell. Cinematography was Dion Beebe. Production companies DC Entertainment and D-Line Pictures. It was distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It's 114 minutes long. Its budget was 200 million. Its box office was 220 million. Tremendous box office flop. Yeah. And that, my dear friends, is the 22nd DC film. And then in 2012, we have The Dark Knight Rises. Oh, mind you, let me just say the following, though. Jonah Hex was, Green Lantern was supposed to be a funny movie. Didn't work. Jonah Hex was a much more serious movie. Didn't work. Watchmen, which is a very serious movie, didn't work. Superman Returns, which, you know, had a lot of heart and romance, and it was kind of funny at the same time, didn't work. So I'm just saying, Catwoman was a serious movie, but it was terrible, and it had nothing really in common with the comics. Didn't work. Steel didn't work, and that was a relatively serious movie again. Batman and Robin didn't work, and that was a comedy. So you see that the bunch of flops, no movie besides the Superman and Supergirl movies had flopped before that. And now we had a bunch of flops over this period of time. Okay. So we had The Dark Knight Rises, which was a tremendous success. And then after that, we had Man of Steel, which, again, was a profitable film. Its budget was huge, though. It was between $225 and $258 million. It comes to somewhere, I don't know what it is. Let me see. Let me add it up. I am sleepy. It needed $602.5 to break even. And it made $668 million. So it broke even and it made a little bit of profit for the studio, which is good for it. So Man of Steel made profit. The Dark Knight Rises made mad profit. The Dark Knight made profit. Batman Begins barely made profit. It broke even. It didn't make any profit. It broke even. It's very important to remember. The next movie that made profit was Batman Forever, and then Batman Returns, and then Batman. That's one thing. That's one thing. The Return of Swamp Thing, I don't know if it actually made profit. The fact that it had a sequel means Swamp Thing did make profit. Swamp Thing itself, I don't know. Did they say what kind of money Swamp Thing made? No, they didn't say. But The Return of Swamp Thing did not make money. No, it didn't. So The Return of Swamp Thing didn't make money. Okay, but Swamp Thing may have made money. Who knows? Superman 2 and Superman made money. Batman 1966, we don't know. I don't. Do we? Yes, Batman 1966 made money, and Superman and the Mole Men, we don't know. It's way back in the times, so I can't say if it made money or it didn't make money. Now we are at, let's see, where are we? So Man of Steel, if I'm not mistaken, is the 24th DC movie. All right, again, you can mention your top 10 DC films. Warner Bros. Is sort of taking over DC for the moment. So Man of Steel at the time made money. Then Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the infamous Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. It cost 250 to 300 million to make. That's 500. A second. So it needed $687.5 million to break even. And it made 873.6 million. So it more than broke even. It actually made more profit, strangely enough, than Man of Steel. Its runtime was cut down, as we all know. So yeah, there you go. Now I personally like the Ultimate Edition more than the theatrical cut. We're talking here about the theatrical cut. In the same year, we also had Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad was actually very profitable, strangely enough, even though this is a ripoff of David Ayer's movie. The budget was 175 million. It made 747 million, which is roughly 5 times its budget. So it definitely made good money. It made really good money. So the first two movies. Now, I want you to understand something, right? When you look at the Dark Knight trilogy, right? The first movie only broke even. Batman Begins only broke even. Then The Dark Knight blew up, and then The Dark Knight Rises blew up. Here, we're not having a trilogy. We're not having a series of movies that follow each other. We're having individual movies by different directors. So the first movie, Man of Steel, made the least amount of money, but it actually made money. It didn't just break even, it made money. Then BVS made more money than it. And then we went into Suicide Squad, which made way more money than both of them, even though it was tampered with by the studio. All of these movies are mainly serious in tone, except for Suicide Squad, which was less story, more character driven, and not as serious in tone. Though it had stakes in it, it was kind of serious, but it wasn't up to the same par as Man of Steel and BVS in terms of stakes and all that. But it made mad money. It made money. Say what you want, it made money. Now, here's the important thing for that. Now, those two movies in that year made money. So for the first time in Warner Brothers' existence, since The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight trilogy, they had two movies in a row that made money for their studio. This happened. Something significantly big is happening in the back of the house right now. The dog's barking like he's going nuts. I have a Rottweiler there. I don't have personally. My neighbor has a Rottweiler, but he's really going nuts right now in the back. So something's moving through the back right now. So that's why you're hearing the dog barking, and I have to be very alert because you have to be careful out here. Dog's really barking. Anyways, I'll get back. I'm talking with you guys. This is a slow burn. It's already an hour and 9 minutes in. We're already 12 hours, 12:26. We're the next day already, August 2nd. But keeping it moving. So the Suicide Squad made more money than BVS, made more money for the studio than Man of Steel. But mind you, this is the second year of Warner Brothers. This was one of the peak years of Warner Brothers, actually, where they made a lot of money. Now, this hadn't happened before to this extent. Now, it did happen. All right, shut up, dog. So the only time that happened again was in 2005 with Constantine and Batman Begins. Batman Begins did not make money; it broke even. But Constantine made some money for the studio, and it wasn't a whole bunch of money. All right. Uh, there was not another year like that. Interestingly enough, yeah, they did. All right, dog, chill. Hold on a second. I gotta see. This dog is really behaving crazy. What's up, dog? Somebody's in the back. I gotta go see what's going on. Something's going on. Someone's in the back. That's nice. Something's moving in the back, but I'm not sure what. Let me show you guys out there. Out there, it's dark. It's nighttime. But you gotta be careful because sometimes you gotta be so careful in this life now. Sometimes people want to do criminal things. Sometimes we've been trying to keep track of certain things to make sure that so that dog's alerting us to something. Something's very, very wrong in the back there. I don't go outside at that time. It might be dangerous. Something maybe the police may have to deal with. So we have to be careful out here, you know. Anyways, man, going on with this stuff. The dogs in the back are not barking as much as this dog. So, yeah. So, Man of Steel was the 24th film. Batman v Superman was the 25th. Suicide Squad is the 26th DC film. Okay. Now, coming off of the Suicide Squad, we then had Wonder Woman. Okay. Now, Wonder Woman, just you know the details of Wonder Woman, so I'm not gonna. Wonder Woman 2017. The film cost 120 to 150 million to make. This means that it basically it's around about 135 million. This film box it made 822.8 million dollars. So Wonder Woman now made even more profit than even any of the preceding movies before it. So Warner Bros. Was on a roll. Okay, they were making more and more and more profit per movie. This had never happened to them, right? Even in the Dark Knight, even with the Dark Knight trilogy, it had made tremendous sums of money, but not increasingly tremendous sums of money like what's happening with these movies. So then they started a universe. So this was really working for them. Things were clicking for them. And for some reason, they decided that they needed to tamper the studio. Now, they had tampered with Suicide Squad. They had tampered with BBS in terms of runtime. But they decided to tamper now with Justice League, and they really tampered with it. And this was the movie that was going to make them the $1 billion. This is definitely going to break through to $1 billion. So when I saw it, Zack Snyder Justice, even though I know the movie wasn't going to have the runtime like Zack Snyder's Justice League that we actually ended up seeing. All right, shut up, dog. All right, so even though this movie was supposed to make way more money than Zack Snyder's Justice League. All right, chill, buddy. All right, so the dog's name is Buddy. He's just going and going and going. yeah, so this movie was supposed to make even more money. I'm just gonna come across here instead. Okay. Ah, Jesus. Sometimes I don't understand. It's 12:31 in the night and the dog's going crazy. Anyways, yeah, this movie was supposed to make way, way more money than it did, Justice League. And you know the whole story behind it. Jeff Johns, John Berg took over. Zack Snyder was, they got Zack Snyder out of there because his daughter committed suicide. And boy, did they run ruction on that movie. I mean, the clown buffoonery that happened. So the budget for the movie was in excess of $300 million because they did extra shoots and all that. They brought in Josh Whedon, who just reintegrated, redid the whole movie. The budget for this movie was $300 million. It needed to make 750 million to break even. It made 657.9 million. Cost the studio a whole heck of a lot of money. In a year where Wonder Woman raked in tremendous profits, it kind of absorbed into the profits, but oh my God. Why they decided they needed a pivot? Why did they think they needed to get bonuses? Why? I don't understand what was going on with the company. They were going so well, and they decided to course correct. So here's where DC starts to go down the shithole. Okay, pretty much. So I said Suicide Squad was the 25th movie. Wonder Woman was the 26th movie. The 27th DC movie was live action, that is, Justice League. The 28th DC movie happened in 2018. It was Aquaman. It made a ton load of money. Here it is. Its budget was 160 to 200 million dollars, which means 360 divided by 180 million dollars, basically on average. It took the cost to make it. It made 1.148 billion dollars, the highest grossing DC movie of all time. Me, quite frankly, it was a shit movie, but I understand why people supported it from the Snyderverse, because we were talking about restore the Snyderverse after that travesty that was called Justice League 2017. They then people were demanding that it's, Jason Momoa supporting it, James Wan, with all of the horror movies that he did were very successful, and then on top of that he was big in Asia. So that combination of James Wan and then his action scene was really gripping. I'm not gonna lie. The rooftop scene, oh shit, it was sick. The action pieces he put in there were just dope. So James Wan and Jason Momoa in combination with Amber Heard, they really killed that movie. And the movie made $1.148 billion. Ridiculous sums of money. It killed it. Now, people say, well, great. So why can't they replicate this? Why they can't make a movie like this, right? Harley Quinn was one of the shining pieces of Studio Squad, right? They cut out all the Jared Leto stuff. So what exactly? She then went on to do her own movie, but we keep keeping it moving here. So 26th DC movie was Wonder Woman. The 27th DC movie was Justice League. The 28th DC movie was Aquaman. The 29th DC movie was Shazam. Shazam was a lesser known character. It was supposed to appeal to kids. It was a family centric sort of movie, clean, PG-13. The budget for it was 90 to 100 million dollars, which means about 95 million dollars it took to make it. Its box office was reasonable, off of a 95 million dollar budget. This was the idea by Walter Hamada to make cheaper movies, and so you wouldn't have to worry about profits. So it raked in. It needed 237.5 million to break even, and it basically made dog shut up. It made 367.7 million, which was really good. It was good but it was coming off, of course, of of Aquaman, so it really should have done better. Should have made a ton. Hopefully, looking to make a gigaton of money. The movie itself is Shazam is in the tone of what Shazam should be. I mean, Zachary Levi kind of overplayed Shazam, but it's okay. It was in the tone of what Shazam is. So the movie actually was kind of comical, but yet it had a serious tone. It had a good message and everything. The message wasn't very deep, but it was a good message nonetheless. It had heart and all of that stuff. The special effects, the graphics, the grounding of the movie was different. It was more fantastical, not as well made when it comes to the action scenes. Having said that, though, and I think New Line Cinema is the one that produced it. I would say this, that the movie itself and David Sandberg's movie paid tribute to BBS. I think just linking it to the Snyderverse was a good thing because Walter Hamada was trying to do separate films, solo films. He wasn't trying to use the Justice League anymore. After what happened with Justice League 2007, he wanted to divorce himself from it. Meanwhile, we were pressing for restore the Snyderverse, of course. I'm sorry, release the Snyder Cut at this time. The fans were there. Anyway, this was the 29th DC film. All right. It actually made profit. So in 2019, that was the 29th DC film. And actually, it turned out to be a good year for them, 2019, because Joker also turned out to make tremendous amounts of money. The studio didn't get all of the money because Warner Brothers did not finance the whole entire thing. So Village Roadshow Pictures, Brown Creative, uh, they also shared in the profits, and then Warner Brother Pictures. They kind of kept up the slack for it. Joker was a tremendously profitable film. The budget for it was 55 to 70 million dollars. When you put that together, you're talking about something like 62, 63 million. It took to make, and it grossed in a whooping 1.074 billion dollars. It was tremendously successful. I personally went to see it myself because it was so gripping, and I really totally enjoyed it. I think I went to the cinema and saw it twice. Um, Very, very successful movie they had in 2019, Joker. So even in spite of the fact that they removed Zack Snyder, they had some good years. 2019 was a good year. 2016 was a good year. 2017 not as prosperous because of it should have been a tremendous year with $1 billion year as well with Justice League, but they dropped the ball on that. I think what happened with the studio is they had so many good franchises, so many good projects in the line that these executives could pick and choose which ones. So sometimes movies would bail them out, but it wasn't so anymore. Birds of 2020 was a terrible year for them. It cost them. Birds of Prey turned out to be a dud. It didn't make any money for them. Wonder Woman 1984 didn't make any money for them. But let's just go back here. Shazam is the 29th movie. Joker was the 30th movie, 30th DC movie. The 31st DC movie was Birds of Prey. The 32nd DC movie was Wonder Woman 1984. Okay, shut up, dog. In 2021, they put out only one DC movie, which was the Suicide Squad. Of course, that year, though, Zack Snyder's Justice League came out, but they did not put it in cinemas, even though Zack Snyder would have loved to have it in cinemas. At the time, we had a different regime with Toby Emmerich, and they did not want to do that. So it is what it is. 2021, The Suicide Squad, and that movie also cost them money because it did not make any money whatsoever. This is during the COVID season, but the response to Zack Snyder's Justice League was so tremendous that to this day we have been using the hashtag Restore the Snyderverse, as you can see for the title of this video tonight. Now in 2022, they had mixed success when we call DC. We're not talking about the DCEU. The DCU was not successful, but DC itself, the brand, had some success. The Batman came out in 2022. It came out March 4th of 2022. It had a budget of 185 to 200 million dollars, which is about 385 million dollars divided by 2, which is 38.9 5. So 192 million dollars. It basically on average cost the studio to make it, and when you multiply that by 2.5, It needed $481 million, 482 million to break even. It made $771 million, which is very good. So it made significant amount of money, and good for them. You know what I'm saying? But that was about it, because the next movie was Black Adam. Black Adam. Interestingly enough, though, the interesting thing about Black Adam is it almost made its budget. Now, it cost a lot of money. Actually, they were very conservative with it. It cost between 190 to 260 million dollars. When we get the average of that, that is, I don't know, that'd be what, 450? Yeah, 450 divided by 2. That's 200. 225 225 million on average it cost to make. So it needed to make 562.5 million to break even. So it really cost the studio money. Unfortunately for it, it made 393.5 million. So it cost the studio a little under $100 million. A little over $100 million, which, believe you me, is conservative compared to the other movies that just flopped horribly. But the Batman kind of absorbed that. So they still, at the end of the day, when it comes to DC, they made a net profit that year in 2022, just like in 2017. But they were supposed to make way more profit, obviously. Shazam, and I do believe Black Adam could have made a lot more profit if they just linked it to Zack Snyder's Justice League instead of Justice League 2017. They distanced themselves from Justice League 2017 before they did the Aquaman movie. If you're distancing yourself from that movie, why are you keeping it as canon? Why don't you just ride the Zack Snyder Justice League movie? I didn't understand that. Here's what it is. 2023, which is this year. Okay, so let me see, where are we? Okay, the 30th movie was Joker. 31st was Birds of Prey. 32nd was Wonder Woman 1984. 38th movie was Suicide Squad. The 39th was the Batman. The 40th DC movie was Black Adam. The 40th DC movie was Black Adam. The 41st DC movie was Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which, as you know, flopped. And then the 42nd DC movie in the entire DC pantheon has been The Flash, which also flopped. And these movies had the potential to do very, 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 very well, especially coming off of Zack Snyder's Justice League. But because there was a change in management as well, so from Walter Amada we went to James Gunn, which from bad to worse, or the same thing, whatever. These people mismanaged the DC brand, and so these are all. We have had 42 DC movies from the very first DC movie with George Reeves back in 1951, Superman and the Mole Men, to this present time. We've gone through a number of different studios, but more or less Warner Brothers kind of holds the fort with most of the DC properties today. But it may change hands again. Here she has a way of repeating itself. And they've had a hold on this IP for a while. Again, please mention your top 10 DC films. These are all the DC films. I'll mention them again. Upcoming DC films are Blue Beetle, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Joker, Folie et Deux. Batgirl has been canceled, but maybe brought online again. All right. So also, we also have some other DC stuff here I didn't see. From DC Imprints, we have V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta is actually a DC film. We also have Stardust. We have The Losers, and we have The Kitchen. All right. So there you go. I think these are also absorbed under DC Wildstorm. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen actually is now absorbed into DC. We have Red. And we also have Red 2. So that's basically it. Now, let's go through again all the DC films from the beginning of time till now and give me your top 10 DC films, okay? So we kind of talked a little bit about DC films here. So number 1, Superman and the Mole Man. Number 2, Batman 1966. Number 3, Superman 1978. Number 4, Superman 2. Number 5, Swamp Thing. Number 6, Superman 3. Number 7, Supergirl. Number 8, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Number 9, The Return of Swamp Thing. And number 10, Batman 1989. Number 11, Batman Returns. Number 12, Batman Forever. Number 13, Batman and Robin. 14, Steel. 15, Catwoman. 16, Constantine. 17, Batman Begins. 18, Superman Returns. 19, The Dark Knight. 20, Watchmen. 21, Jonah Hex. 22, Green Lantern. 23, The Dark Knight Rises. 24, Man of Steel. 25, Batman v Superman. 26, Suicide Squad. 27, Wonder Woman. 28, Justice League. 29, Aquaman. 30, Shazam. 31, Joker. I kind of miscalculated. I thought Joker was 30. 31 is Joker. 32 is Birds of Prey. 33 is Wonder Woman 1984. 34 is The Suicide Squad with James Gunn. 35 is The Batman. 36 is Black Adam. 37 is Shazam's Cure of the Gods. And 38, not 42, but 38 is The Flash. Okay? And we're going to round up this year with 39 Blue Beetle and 40 Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be the 40th DC movie. Now, in between that, as we said before, there's V for Vendetta, which we didn't mention. Stardust, The Losers, and The Kitchen, which we did not mention. These are also DC imprints, such as Vertigo. It's called Vertigo now. And there's also Wildstorm. Wildstorm also produced some movies as well. So those are, you can include those guys. There's Paradox Press, which is Road to Perdition, and The History of Violence, as well as you have Wildstorm, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Red, and Red 2. All right? Okay, now, we're only talking about live action films. So give me your top 10 DC films. You heard all of them. If you haven't seen some of these, I would suggest you go see them for the sake of knowing for history, not necessarily because you like them. But you give me your top 10 DC films. I'm not seeing anybody putting anything in the comment section, but I see you guys watching me. So please list your top 10 DC films. I gave you all the DC films that happened so far, the 38 DC films that have happened since 1951 to now. So you tell me, what are your top 10 DC films? It took me a little while. I'll do a short condensed version so I can ask that question again to you guys, and you can provide your information to me maybe in a short. But I want to know, what are your top 10 DC films? You remember, you can use Wildstorm, Vertigo, you can use these imprints, DC imprints. You can use them as well. All right. Now that we've gone through that, let's go into the other thing that I said we're going to talk about. The former president of Warner Brothers, who his name is Greg Silverman, he said that Zack Snyder, besides Sucker Punch, which cost him a lot of money, and Owls of Gahul, all Zack Snyder's DC films have been extremely profitable to Warner Brothers. Said very profitable to Warner Brothers. And that's a great statement to hear from Greg Silverman. Because I don't know if any other head of DC, Zack Snyder was head of DC, and when he did these movies that came out theatrically, I don't know if any other head of DC who has been profitable to DC. I mean, Walter Hamada got one win. I think his win was under, he started off with Shazam, so he had one win. But then after that, all the other movies have cost the studio money. And James Gunn has inherited that from Walter Hamada. And he hasn't done anything to allow these movies to be profitable and to make the studio money. In fact, let me just make this abundantly clear. Now, not to say that the Batman did happen under Walter Hamada. So under Walter Hamada, there were 3 profitable movies that he had, right? So when we look at the run, and we're not talking DCU, we're just talking DC period, okay? Under him, being the head of DC, he had three profitable movies, whether he inherited it or not, which were as follows. So Walter Amada came on the scene in 2018. Now, he didn't really have anything to do with Aquaman. Aquaman basically came out uh, in transition. So even though Walter Amada came on the scene, he had nothing to do with Aquaman. So his thing was Shazam. Under him, Shazam, Joker was really rolled out before in the previous regime, but nonetheless, he benefited from it. So he had Shazam and Joker that were profitable, and the Batman. Okay, so Walter Amada's legacy is three profitable movies: the Batman, Joker, and Shazam. Okay, that's what he did under his reign. Under the reign of Jeff Johns and John Berg, they were from 2017 to 2018. They were successful in getting Aquaman, right? I think they influenced Aquaman, nothing else. Under Zack Snyder and his reign, we had Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman all making money. So all four films that came under Zack Snyder made money. Isn't that crazy? Okay. And then Jeff Johns and John Byrne took over, and they had a flop in Justice League. And then under them, Aquaman came. Aquaman was successful, wildly unsuccessful, but nonetheless, it was successful. So Hamada had Shazam, the Batman, and Joker. Even though Joker was a project that he didn't see the need to have, and Toby Emmerich, which was stupid, but it is what it is. It made mad money under him. Okay, so do we give him credit for Joker? I don't know, but that's up to you to figure out. My point being that the heads of DC, even before Greg Silverman was the head of DC, so Greg Silverman used to be the head of DC. Okay, head of Warner Brothers marketing. Period. So it was DC and everything, but there was no head of DC before that. And Jeff Johns and John Byrne became head of DC. But anyway, one time about him, Greg Silverman was crazily successful because he started off with in 2005 with Batman Begins, and Constantine was under him. So that was a year where they broke even. They made a little bit of money. And then under him, he had the flop Superman Returns. Then he had the Dark Knight, which was madly successful. Watchmen was a flop. Jonah Hex was a flop. Green Lantern was a flop. And the Dark Knight Rises was a tremendous success. Man of Steel was a success. Batman v Superman was a success, and then he was out of the game. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He had 6 successful movies that made profit out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Out of 10. That's extraordinary. 6 out of 10 movies made profit. That's extraordinary. Okay. Actually 7 out of 11, because Suicide Squad. Now Zack Snyder, he was president until up to Suicide Squad or Wonder Woman, I think. Well, up to Suicide Squad, I think, or even Wonder Woman. I think I even know Wonder Woman because he rolled out. Wonder Woman was the project that was under him, so he rolled out after Wonder Woman, and then Jeff Johns and they took over. So basically, what I'm saying is Greg Silverman was extremely successful, 7 out of 11. And he said Watchmen was actually profitable to the company, so that's interesting, or at least alluded to that. So what I'm saying, this is a guy that was successful in making movies and making the company money. When it comes to the DC brand, I believe he was the most successful president of DC. Toby Emmerich, let's see Toby Emmerich. So Toby Emmerich came on the scene with Justice League. So Toby Emmerich, 2017, he had Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam, Joker, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, The Suicide Squad, The Batman, and Black Adam. These are all his projects. Walter Amada was there. In fact, we're still rolling out Walter Amada's projects, actually. But nonetheless, here's the thing. Uh, he had successful out of these movies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Out of these 9 movies, he had one, two, three. 3 out of 9 of those movies were successful as him as president. Under Walter Hamada, which we're still rolling out the movies, Hamada did Hamada has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So out of the 9 so far that have rolled out under Walter Hamada, 1, 2, 3. 3 out of 9 have been successful. Okay? 3 out of 9. So Greg Silverman's way better than those guys. Greg Silverman has had 7 out of 11. These have 3 out of 9. And you got Blue Beetle and Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, and I don't know how that's going to do. You know, but Joker sequel was greenlit under them as well, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, what else we got? Batgirl was canceled. So basically, what I'm saying is the most successful guy. Let's see. The former regime before that was. See how successful they were. So the former regime started with Batman. So in 1989. So we had Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever. That's 3 successful ones. Batman and Robin flopped. Steel flopped. Catwoman flopped. Yeah. So that regime was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So out of 8 movies, they had 1, 2, 3. They had 3 movies out of 8 that was successful. So, like I said before, Warner Brothers has not really had that kind of success until Greg Silverman stepped onto the scene and actually brought success to them, and Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan. That's crazy. It's really crazy. You know, former president of Warner Brothers said that Zack Snyder made them money. The only films that he didn't make money for them was Sucker Punch and The Owls of Gahoo, which are not DC films, obviously. So anyway, give me again your top 10 DC films. I'm not seeing anybody saying anything in any comments or anything. You can also join as a guest if you want. I'm here. I'm chopping it up with you guys. I'm about to take 2 minutes, maybe even 3, maybe even 2 hours, or maybe even 3 hours with you guys. But I want you guys to chop it up with me at this time. Don't just watch. Say something. Communicate. Let's go. So the next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about, like I said before, when I read the scripture, which is Mark chapter 9, verses 35, I was saying to you guys that a leader has to be the biggest servant. He has to take care of the people he's in charge of. He's responsible for them. And so as a result, WB hasn't understood that. They think leadership means they call the shots and they force people to do things and they're not listening, right? It's time WBD listens to us. But we understand that the people in WBD, they are full of themselves, they're full of ego, except for a certain set of people. So how do we deal with this situation? I'm going to suggest to you guys you do this. You address your requests and concerns to Warner Brother Pictures, not DC, not WB. Why? The individuals who head Warner Brother Pictures, their names are Max DeLuca and Pam Abdi. And these people are reasonable people. They come from Lionsgate, and they're reasonable people, as has been seen. Zack Snyder's been able to deal with them. And I believe even Zack Snyder supporting these movies is as a result of maybe his relationship with them and the fact that maybe they're looking for ways to have him still do his movies in Warner Brothers. With this strike that's going on, I have been suggesting to a lot of people, as my title says, that I specifically address them and I address things to Warner Brother Pictures. The reason why I address it to Warner Brother Pictures is because Warner Brothers Discovery, or even DC itself, the people there are not interested in what we are saying. They just are not. James Gunn doesn't care about what we do. He's vilified us. He's called us toxic, etc. He's going to carry on with what he wants to do, even though Mr. Chuck Dixon, who is the, of course, creator of Bane, Mr. Chuck Dixon has said that this guy doesn't even understand what audience he's dealing with. He's just putting out whatever he feels like putting out. And from what I hear from 4KO, what I hear from 4KO's channel, what I hear from forgot what the guy's name is right now, channel, is that even the people, mainstream people and people who just love DC and go and see all the DC movies, they're not interested in what he's putting forward because he's not interested in what the audience wants. Like I said, you have to listen. You have to listen to the people who you're serving. If you are put in a leadership position, then you have to listen to people so you can best manage and guide not only each individual to a certain direction, but also the whole to a certain direction. And it takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of work. And we've known James Gunn wasn't the guy for the job, but now it's kind of really cementing in our minds that he's not the guy for the job because he can't even get the DC movies that are rolling out right now, get people interested in seeing these DC movies, right? He should be overseeing the trailers of these movies, should be overseeing different things to ensure that these movies actually have a good product and come out so that people actually want to see the movies. The trailers are not inducing anyone to want to see these movies. The best that we've got so far was with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, with the build up to his movie. But because they had jokes in it and stuff like that, it turned off people, you know? But I get when they started to have the serious tone, people were like, okay, I'm interested, I'm dialing. Listen, it's not, let me say this again. The audience that Warner Brothers is tending to, and like I said before, if they don't understand what they're doing with the DC properties will be taken from them. They will lose it because they won't have money to hold on to it anymore. Okay, they've had the DC properties for a very long time. They did some good things with it, but then they went and they destroyed what was a good thing going on with the directors, right? And they've done it time and time again. So maybe it needs to pass from Warner Brothers' hands to somebody else. They seem to have some very good IPs right now, and they can pursue those IPs, and maybe DC needs to go into different hands. But until then, they need to pay attention and listen to the audience. Not just listen and then ignore them and go ahead and do whatever you want to do. No, you have to understand so that the audience feels fulfilled. The audience feels like it's being addressed. Not just addressed, but that you're doing something about it, something that can interest them, that really can capture their interest, that they want to go to the cinema to see. And then two, that you are able to build the morale of your company and your brand and the brand that's called DC. DC is a great brand, but at present, it's being turned into a joke. And the people who come to see DC are not interested in jokes. They're not. Okay? DC has a vast history. Some movies are funny, some movies are not. But one thing that DC does is it gives you value. It gives you some kind of substance. And that's missing in DC today. The studio seems hell-bent on producing a certain kind of DC movie in spite of the fact that there's no demand for it. 6 flops in a row. You would think that the tone-deaf executives and the tone-deaf creators of DC would understand that that doesn't work. It's not working for them, right? It's never. It's the rare occasion it works. Okay, Aquaman, it worked. You know, Superman 1978 wasn't really all that giggles and laughs, but Superman 1978 worked. Okay, but it's not sustainable. Now, when you look at the movies that did well in DC's pantheon history, let's go through them. Let's go through the movies again that made profit in DC's pantheon history. Let's look at them. Superman and the Mole Man. Okay, that was one of the first DC movies. Batman 1976 was wacky as hell, but it made money. Superman 1978 it had heart, it was humorous, it made money. Superman 2, humorous, made money, right? Wasn't what Donna wanted to do. Made less money than Superman 1978. So this is the first time a DC movie is making less money as a sequel than the first movie. Okay? People say, well, sequels always usually make less money. That's not true. Because if you look at Christopher Nolan's movies, his sequels always made more money than the movie before it. So that's not true. Okay, let's go. So after 1980, the next time a movie actually made profit for the studio was in 1989, 9 years later, in Batman 1989. Now it had some humor in it, dark humor, but it was a very dark movie. Batman had swung from Batman 1966, light and flowery and stuff, to dark. It had some dark humor, but it was mostly a dark movie. Very graphic, very violent. Really enjoyed it. All right, anyway. 3 years later, in 1992, so that made money, okay? Made mad money for the time. Mad money. Superman 1992, Batman Returns, 1992, made money. Not as much money as Batman 1989. They were saying, Batman 1992 is too violent. The kids can't watch it. Blah, 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 blah. Yada, 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 yada. So we had Batman Forever, which did not make much more money, but it had brighter colors and blah, 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 blah. This is the studio trying to force an issue, right? So Mr. Schumacher never got to make the movie he wanted to make. Then we got Batman and Robin, which was just complete wacky stuff. And the audience said, nah, to that. Okay, so let's just forget that. So anyway, what I'm saying is 1989 to 1992, you had 2 successful movies. And you didn't have another successful DC movie until 2005. So from 1992 to 2005 is how many years, people? Please help me. Help me here. How many years is that? 13 years. Flop after flop after flop. Why? Because the studio decided that Batman and Robin and Light and Fluffy is where we're going, and messed up everything. Because what we were supposed to, the Catwoman movie that was supposed to come after Batman Returns, and they screwed everything up. They screwed it up so bad. It was supposed to be a Catwoman movie after Batman Returns. Misha Pfeiffer was supposed to play Catwoman. It was supposed to be a spin-off of Batman Returns. And they screwed it up. Good. So it took 13 years before the studio got Batman Begins and Constantine, which made a little bit of money for them in 2005. But they really started making money in 2008, 3 years after that. So we're talking about 16 years before they actually made a profitable movie, which was The Dark Knight. Made a lot of money. Let's not pretend. And it took them 4 more years before they made another profitable movie. Right? Because where there is no vision, the people perish. But then the following year, in 2013, they also made profit. And then 3 years after, they made the most profit they ever made in a doubleheader in Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. Now, I want you to notice the movies that are happening, though, where they're making their profits, right? So let's look at them. The early days, okay, in the early days, Superman and the Mole Man was a serious movie. Batman 1966 was wacky as hell. Superman and Superman 2 were funny movies. But they tried to do that same model. And for the next 7 freaking years, okay, sorry, not 7, sorry, 9 years, they tried to use that formula. It did not work. 9 years. Then they came with slightly dark humor, dark movie, serious movie in Batman, and it made money. 3 years later, Batman Returns made money. Then they tried to lighten up Batman Forever. It still made money, but then by the time they came to Batman and Robin, okay, And it wasn't for another 16 years, ladies and gentlemen. 16 years before they made another movie, dark as hell, The Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, not The Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, my bad. The Dark Knight in 2008. That was a very dark movie, right? That they made money. And then they waited another 4 years to make some more money. Another dark movie. And then Man of Steel, which was a serious tone movie. It wasn't as dark as The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight, but it was serious. And that movie made money. Then Batman v Superman, another serious movie, made money. The Suicide Squad, they messed with it. You see the same thing that's happening here. It's slightly messing with movies now. They start messing with the movies. Suicide Squad made money. Wonder Woman, they didn't mess with that too much. They did mess with it a little bit, but we ain't gonna talk about that. Wonder Woman made money. And then they go and sabotage everything so that they miss another money-making venture in 2017. In 2018, anyway, Aquaman makes money. So the following year, Shazam makes money in 2019, and Joker. This is probably the most amount of money they made in a given year. 2019. Okay. But then after that, 2020, 2021, 2022. Okay, 2022, they made some money with the Batman. All right. 2023, nothing so far. Now they're shortening up the space of time that they F up the situation. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is they're not getting any smarter. They always feel we need to go back to selling toys. It needs to be light and fluffy. Comic book. You can tell these ignorant people don't know anything about comic books. And their vision of comic books is Marvel, light, fluffy, not to be taken serious, and self-aware and that kind of nonsense. And to me, like, they can't understand that comic book movies are literature and that comic book movies can teach you something deeper, better. And they don't see that their demographic wants something like that. They want something new, deeper, better. They can't see that for some reason. Even though the history shows you that people respond to actually comic book movies that take serious because you have a counterpoint. Marvel doesn't take their comic book heroes seriously. So DC wants to take their comic book heroes seriously. Yeah, there are certain comic book heroes actually they take seriously, like Captain America. They really protect that character. Again, I don't want to go into the CIA-led propaganda, but it is what it is. So that's why it's time that WBD listens to us. But while we're going to speak to WBD, we're not going to speak to the people who we know will not really listen to us. No, we speak to the people who we know will listen to us. Abdi and DeLuca. All right, now let's go back to the homework lesson. List for me, please. If you want to join in as a guest and just say it out, or you want to list it out in the chat area. List for me, please, your top 10 DC films. Now, they don't have to. Listen, I don't really care. They don't have to have made profit, okay? You can list any top 10 DC films. We just mentioned 38 DC films that have actually seen theaters, okay, on a global basis. All right? Now, do understand, Zack Snyder's Justice League hasn't seen theaters. So that is why I ask you guys to petition for Zack Snyder's Justice League to see theaters this coming October after Blue Beetle. This is in case Warner Bros. Actually survives to last that long, or if they sell out the IP or what. I don't know what they're going to do. But will you guys please petition to Warner Brother Pictures, and you can certify Abdi and DeLuca and continue to request for the release of the Snyder Cut, hashtag release the Snyder Cut globally in cinemas and IMAX in October. Warner Brother Pictures, Abdi and DeLuca, and make some money. Because in this time where we're having a strike between, I know negotiations are trying to be reopened, but in this time of a strike between the SAG-SAFTRA Actors Guild and also the Writers Guild of America with the Producers Organization of America, you're going to find that um, no serious production work, unless you're dealing with an indie film or something, is really going on. So that means that we have an opportunity to see the Snyder Cut released in cinemas, because there's no big set of work that needs to be done by any employable people to put it in cinemas. It's actually IMAX ready as we speak. So why not put the movie in cinemas? The reason why we say that is because it won't cost you a whole ton of money to distribute it into cinemas. And two, to set the wrongs right. You're going to knock out a whole bunch of birds with one stone. You're going to set wrongs right. Two, you're going to actually make profit. This movie's going to make profit, right? Because you're going to get back something from it. Now, this movie cost, I think, $70 million to finish, something like that. So they haven't made back that $70 million. I'm pretty sure they will make it back. Okay. If this movie makes $100 million in the cinema, $200 million in the cinema, 400, 500, maybe $1 billion, whatever it makes in the cinema, here's the thing. That's bonus money for you. Because Barbie's going to kill it. And if this DC film kills it in the cinema, which is very possible, the cost to have made it would have been $70 million. You are about $100 and something million in the hole, by and large, by the franchise known as Justice League, meaning the version that went into theaters cost you about $100 and something million. You then added $70 million on top of that to that cost to produce this movie. Don't you want to make back your money? Why not put the movie into cinemas? I know it's a 4-hour long movie. You put an intermission somewhere in there, right? You let people, just let the movie run in cinemas. Let it run in cinemas for as long as possible. The cinemas will take their cut. You'll get your cut. If people love the movie, love seeing it, particularly in IMAX, if people love seeing this movie in IMAX, because this movie's made for IMAX. If people love seeing this movie in IMAX, even though this movie has come out, a version of it has come out, even though this movie has come out on digital, even though this movie's come out on DVD, and so you put it out there. Let's see how much it grosses. Because it really never had a global cinematic debut. And yes, people know the story, and yes, people have seen it, but they've never seen it in the cinema, and that's an experience in itself. And I can tell you for a fact, if all of the Snyder fan base comes out, you're guaranteed $500 million off of this movie, just off the Snyder fan base alone. $500 million, period. And that should set the record straight right there. All your bills, all your debts, $500 million. Now, if other people jump on board, people like the movie so much that people even go into the cinema to see it. Now, the thing about it is they're going to ask for a sequel. They're going to ask for a sequel. So this is why I don't understand why. Just put it out there, see what happens, and I don't understand how these people work. You have to look at all options. So if I was you, I would be putting that thing out there because you want to see how that plays out. While James Gunn is doing this thing on the side, see how that plays out. That's how I do it. I wouldn't exclude anything, but I keep all my cards on the table. And you have an ace of spades as a company. You have an ace of spades sitting down there doing nothing, which is Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's an ace of spades. If Universal could get this property tomorrow, they would put it in cinemas. Comcast would run with this sucker so hard. Okay, because they want another $1 billion something. And they know they could have it with this. You're sitting on it because you have too much IPs. You have too much good stuff. Barbie just made money for you this year. So you're not really caring. Creed 3 did something. What was the other movie that came out that did Monsters did something? I think it was Monsters or whatever it was. I can't give you Zombies or something. I can't remember what it was. So you've had movies this year that have actually made over $100 million profit for you. See, you don't care. You have a lot of IPs. Warner Brothers doesn't care. So if you got IPs that you don't know what to do with, sell them. Sell them to people who want to use them. Lease them, whatever it is, to people who want to use them to carry them out. But you need to keep all your cards on the table. You can't be rocking with Gunn, hoping that he does something, and then it flops on you, and then you have to wait another 7, 8, 9, 10 years. What is wrong with this company? Like, have you look at your track history, right? So, anyways, Abdi and DeLuca are reasonable people. Their hands are kind of tied because Zaslav, is the head honcho in charge, and what he says goes. But if they really want to make money off of DC and have the property not run into the ground and die, then do us a favor. Put out Zack Snyder's Justice League. See how that runs. That's all you have to do is put it out and see how it runs. See how it does. And if it's good enough, restore the Snyderverse. Let him do his sequel. It's that simple. October this year is still on the cards. It's still on the table, even though we're in the month of August now. Don't go last minute trying to do something for October. If you know you can't do it for October, then don't do it. But as it is, if you make an announcement tomorrow that Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to be in cinemas, whether you merge up with Universal, Warner Brothers, Universal's going to do the distribution, or you link up with some other company, maybe Netflix, whatever it is, depending on your relationship with Netflix or Amazon or Sony or Disney or whoever. Please let it not be Disney, okay? But then again, you never know. The point is, anyway, that you link up with a company and you distribute. So it bears cost. You won't get all the profits, but at least you get some of the profits. You distribute the movie. You able to account for all the debt that you raised from the branding, meaning any version of Justice League that was out there. You incur debt. Now, to erase that debt, why not put that thing in cinema and run it as far as it can go, see how much money it can make. And when it racks up enough money, you pay off your debt and you have some extra money in hand. That's how I look at it. I look at it as Zack Snyder's Justice League. Because you're closing off the DCU anyway. So why are you talking about this is canon or that is canon? It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore because the DCEU is supposed to be closing off. So why not put this movie out there in cinemas, see how many people come to see it, see how many people are interested in it, and let's see what goes on from there. Let's see what goes on from there. But me personally, I truly believe that these movies, Zack Snyder's Justice League, will make at least $500 million. And I'm not exaggerating here. That movie is gonna make money because visually speaking, the movie is in its own category. Right? You see the Flash turn back time. Nobody does the Flash better than Zack Snyder. The Flash does not look wacky. He doesn't look wonky. He doesn't look stupid. He doesn't look dumb. Okay? The way how Zack does it with his visual effects, that the DJ and the whole visual effects team and all, they do such a tremendous job of making these characters look tremendous. The guy that stole the show with Zack Snyder Justice is the Flash. He stole the show. Okay? There was a lot of great moments in Zack Snyder's Justice League, from Cyborg and how he flew and everything, to to all the members, Aquaman doing his thing, Wonder Woman doing her thing, seeing her deal with the terrorists. Just crazy how she was blocking bullets and stuff. Just incredible to see Superman come through, Steppenwolf throws down the axe on him, bang, not impressed. Just so many great moments in that movie. So the point being, why not put that on the biggest possible screen? you possibly can. This is what Zach made it for IMAX. Put it in the biggest possible screen. Let people go see it. I would pay repeatedly just to go see Zack Snyder's Justice League in IMAX. You know what I mean? I would I would love to see that movie in IMAX. That movie sells itself. You don't even have to do a whole bunch of advertising for it. Spend money on advertising. That movie sells itself. All people want to know is where and when. And they'll show up in their droves. We've got fans doing screenings of Zack Snyder Justice League. Fans, they want to see it on the biggest possible screen. So all I'm saying is, this is what you need to do. Let's go back. Top 10 DC films. Like, y'all just watching me. Y'all not saying nothing. Y'all not doing nothing. Y'all must be coming here to try and get information from me to go spread it somewhere else. That's what probably is up, because y'all just watching. Y'all ain't saying shit. But I know y'all watching me. That's cool though. Let me go through therefore, since y'all don't want to present nothing, y'all just be able like just watching. I'm watching you. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically I'm done with what I plan to do. What I'm saying is though that scripture says if you're gonna be a leader, then understand the responsibility you have, and you got to be the biggest servant. You have to be able to help people take care of their needs, know what it is they want, and be able to fulfill it for them. Let them fulfill their goals and whatever it is they want. So that's all I'm saying. Now, let's talk about each of these films, the pluses and minuses. And I want you guys to think about it. Having informed top 10 DC films. Now, some of you will mention the most recent films. I do believe that's what you would do, which is cool. But I would suggest that you really go through it, look at the context where these films came out, the time and everything before you do your top 10 DC films. I don't know what you guys would say, but let me show you some of the films that are hallmarks of DC. So you have Superman and the Mole Men. That's a hallmark DC film. And the reason is it was indie produced. It was independently produced. Right? Lippert Pictures was a privately owned company that was started by some gentlemen, two gentlemen. So Superman and the Mole Man was indie production. The first DC film was an indie film. Something else worth noting. Batman 1966 was a film made because the television series was so successful. So because the television series was successful, they said, oh, let's make a movie out of it. And so 20th Century Fox did so, and it was quite successful. The question is, why did they not do a sequel to it? They only did Batman 1966, and they never did a sequel movie to it. Isn't that interesting? Interesting, isn't it? I think so. Many, many years later, 12 years later, they did Warner Brothers for the first time. Their first superhero movie was Superman 1978. Okay, it's highly successful. They tried to duplicate it with Superman 2, but they fired Richard Donner, so it was not as successful. And then we didn't have anything successful from then until 9 years later. Okay, the important thing to understand is when it comes to DC, superhero movies started as an indie production. I want you to remember that, because we may be going back to those times where DC superhero movies are produced by indie companies. I just want to mention that the former president of Warner Brothers, that is Mr. Greg Silverman, has a indie production company as well as Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon have a production company known as Artists Equity. Mr. Greg Silverman, his production company's name, hold on a second, I'm going to tell you what the name of this company is in a second. Hold on a second. I'm going to find him first. I'm trying to remember the name. Sometimes the name slips me. And they actually have some movies that are in production right now, but they're going through different stages and phases. Sometimes you have to enter competitions and stuff like that, film festivals and stuff like that. So they're going through their different phases. By the way, Mr. Clay Enos, he's actually a producer and a director of a particular film. And here is Mr. Greg Silverman. By the way, Mr. Greg Silverman was also responsible for The One with Jet Li, that Jet Li film. Stampede Ventures. So Stampede Ventures is the company that Mr. Greg Silverman. So if this strike continues to go on, I do believe these indie companies will be much more willing to agree to what SAG-SAFTRA is proposing, in which case a lot of people can still get work with these companies. I think they're small companies, of course, so the budgets are not as big for the production movies, but the quality of movie, it's not always dependent on the budget. So, Mr. Zack Snyder's name is trending on Twitter like crazy. In fact, Mr. Clint Eastwood actually did have a picture standing with Mr. Zack Snyder honoring him. So it's just interesting how Zack Snyder's name is all over the place. And we know Warner Brothers wants to kind of leverage that to get us to watch their Blue Beetle movie, which is not going to happen. But anyway, my point is, what's interesting about it is the first DC movie was an indie production, and we may be seeing something like that happening again in the future. So you never know how things can pan out. Okay. At another time, I'll do the animated side of DC. The animated side of DC is kicking ass. There's not as much people who pay to view the animated side of DC, which is sad. But the animated side of DC is killing it. All right, so significant films for the history of DC: Superman and the Mole Men, Batman 1966, Superman 1978, Batman 1989. These are significant films, significant Hallmark films. We have Constantine and Batman Begins, leading up to Dark Knight trilogy, blah, 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 blah. We never had a sequel for Constantine, but it's something worth the while because it actually made a profit. And they can build off of it. I don't understand these people, but whatever. Then you have Man of Steel, that was significant for the beginning of the DCEU. And we had a combination of companies that actually produced this film. So there was Warner Brothers, there was DC Entertainment, Legendary Pictures, and Cruel and Unusual Films, which is now Stone and something, whatever. And then Syncope. So these were the combination of production companies that made Man of Steel. And Batman v Superman, it was a conglomerate as well. Warner Brothers, DC Entertainment, Rat Pack Entertainment, Cruel and Unusual Films, Atlas Entertainment. Atlas Entertainment is what's his name? It's coming to me, but the name is slipping my mind right now. So that's okay. So the point is, now you have a number of different production companies that are putting money together to make a film. That's what's happening with these big budget movies. So it's not just one production company doing it, but a number of production companies. Right. And Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, Joker, and The Batman. Those are the profitable movies. Pivotal movie, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is a very pivotal movie. Man of Steel is another pivotal movie. All right, so go ahead and write the top 10 DC films you think that you like. I'm going to get out of here because it's late. It's 1:36 in the morning, but I just thought I would share this with you guys. Take the information, use it as you best can. I will compress as much of this information that I just gave in the form of a short. So look out for that short in the future. Until then, happy emancipation to everybody. If you celebrate emancipation wherever you are, I'll catch you guys later. I am Christ, I am Disciple. Look out for some more music from me as well and videos. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.